Hello and welcome into the Sporting Pod. Along with Mauricio Ruiz, I'm Cole Pepper. Tony Allegretti, once again, living the high life. We're going to dock him pay for that, but we'll have Tony rejoin us next week. Probably.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
It's always a lot more fun.
It is, because you're terrible.
It's a bigger party. The more the merrier.
It's a lot cozier here in the Gemstone Media Studios.
One of the cool thing is, we always talked about, doing this to give a little bit of a sneak peek behind. And there are reasons why Tony oftentimes isn't here or sometimes that I'm not here, because we're dealing with some of these kind of last minute occurrences that are coming up on the buildup of a club, whether it's really important meetings that just get on the schedule and we just really can't. So it's no disregard to this pod or to our to our fans that are listening. We really appreciate it. But know that Tony is working really, really hard to get something done.
And we will give you the inside when we can on what Tony's doing. Coming up here today on the pod, when Wolves came to Jacksonville, we hear from two members of the Wolverhampton Wanderers who made the trip from England to Jacksonville back in 1981 as the Wolves prepare to return to Jacks for a summer matchup with West Ham. Building a rivalry, Florida Elite and Tampa Bay Suns USLW teams met, what it could mean for the future. And the matchups are set for the U.S. Open Cup quarterfinals, what the road looks like for three remaining USL Championship teams. I want to remind you, we are fed by the Bearded Pig, locally owned and operated with locations in San Marco and Jacks Beach. Make sure you swing by the Bearded Pig for great barbecue and great times. All right, Premier League soccer heading to Everbank Stadium, as we've been telling you for the last month or so. Wolverhampton Wanderers and West Ham United will compete for the Stateside Cup. Tickets are on sale now. We'll have special ticket deals for Sporting Jacks members coming up. Wolverhampton came to the United States at least twice before. Once during 1967 when they were adopted as the LA Wolves in the first season of the WUSA, a precursor to the NASL. Wolves thrillingly won that league that year, winning the finals in double overtime. Wolves also came to Jacksonville in 1981 to play a friendly against the Jacksonville Tea Men. And I spoke with two of the players from that team, John Richards and Colin Brazier. Brazier wound up playing for the Tea Men for 2 seasons, actually. But I want to play a few of their comments here, Mauricio. Started our conversation by asking about what they remembered from that trip. Here's John Richards.
Well, it was basically unheard of. For the previous 10, 12 years, we'd been going for end-of-season trips to other countries close to us in Europe, Norway, Sweden. So this one came totally out of the blue. Our manager at the time was a guy called John Barnwell, and we'd won the League Cup the year before in 1980. And so in 1981, at the end of the season, we were all notified we were going to go over to America and to Florida. And there was nobody in at the club at the time who'd actually been there before. So it was quite an adventure and really a long way to go for what was basically, one match. So it was...
As I call it, there was the famous trip for the tour in L.A. Years earlier for Wolves. But you must have been thinking this was kind of an out of the blue kind of plan to come to Florida for a friendly.
Oh yeah, well it's only been the last few months that I knew that Wolves in the 60s had gone to LA. One of my friends, he was there, and it was a trip of a lifetime. One of our goalkeepers, Phil Parks, he'd never even left the country, and he was on his way to America. That was his first out the country. But it's I think for everybody at Wolves going to America, it was just so exciting at the time. You know what I mean? And when we're there, I think just getting used to the heat and everything was buzzing all the while. You know what I mean? It was a fantastic adventure.
John, I have to think that the Tea Men probably took things a lot more seriously than you all did at that time. They were trying to establish, the North American Soccer League and trying to start defining soccer in this country. How seriously did you guys take that matchup?
Not very seriously. I think we had a few issues going over there anyway. One of our main players, Jeff Palmer, he'd actually forgotten to renew his passport, and they tried to get it renewed, and it actually didn't arrive until the day we left, and he wasn't there with us to go. So we had to leave one of the key players behind. But really, from our point of view, it was just a sort of we'd had a tough season. We hadn't had a particularly good season, and it was just really a relaxing few days away in somewhere we'd never been before. And as Colin says, it was exciting. The game itself, can't remember a great deal about it. Someone told me I scored a goal, but it was our only one. And I believe they also, Jacksonville had Ali Brown, the West Brom player, playing for them, and he scored for them late on in the match as well. So there were two English people out there scoring goals. But no, it was more for us, Cole, as a relaxation, end of season sort of trip, and that's the way we took it.
Oh, and it turned into something different for you, as it turned out. You were just showing your Jacksonville Tea Men shirts from your time here. So how did it go from making a visit to becoming a member of the Tea Men?
Well, I was when I got back home, I was going away on holiday to Madeira with my ex-wife and her mother and father, and we took off from Birmingham, and the plane had a cracked windscreen, so we diverted down to Luton. When I got into Luton Airport, there was a tannoy. Will I please go and take a phone call? Went there, took a phone call, and it was Jacksonville saying, would you come over and play for us? Well, I did. I left the wife and the mother and father over there, shot back over a couple of days later to England, got my stuff together, caught the plane to America, had about 3 or 4 days in America, caught the plane back home, got my stuff and got everything sorted out, and then flew back to America again. And so it was, I was jet sitting first time in my life.
What a cool bit of history there. So great to chat with those two guys. Richards is in the administration of the club now. And as you heard there, Brazier brought out his Tea Men jerseys. We'll show those on the Sporting Jacks Report on TV next week. But I love hearing from guys who played in that era, particularly playing in England, where the glory and the money, there was maybe a little bit of glory, but the money was not nearly what it is now. And for the most part, those guys were playing for their hometown clubs. That was kind of the way it was. But it's just such an interesting bit of synergy, that you have Wolves coming to play West Ham, that you had a guy who played in that game the last time that Wolves played here in America, and that he played for the Team Men in Jacksonville. It's great. Again, like I said, we'll have more coming up on TV and also on the radio show coming up.
Yeah, I just keep thinking about the guy leaving his wife and his in-laws at the airport to come to America.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. Colin, right?
Yeah.
So it would be great to meet him and kind of get a little bit. How did that story end? Because he did preface it by, I left my ex-wife. I wonder if that was the beginning of the end over there.
I don't know if that was the cause or not. But he wound up playing basically 2 seasons here for in the United States for the Tea Men, and kind of was going back and forth. He told me he never could quite get to the point playing with Wolves where he was a regular. So this was a chance for him to get more playing time.
Well, there's a great documentary on Paramount Plus now, the $1 billion goal, really kind of where soccer changed in the 70s and 80s with the U.S. And they talk about in those early days where a lot of the English teams during their off season just came over here and established LA Wolves, and there's so many others. So they were pretty much a full roster of players that either weren't playing a lot or some of the regulars that just needed extra playing for additional money and so forth. They'll play for 2 to 3 months here in the U.S., establish their brand, and some of them are still established today, and then they kind of they went back home. So he was part of, the Wolves had a little bit of history in building U.S. soccer in its early days.
Yeah, and for sure, and they'll be back here. There's a great picture with John Richards I saw, and I didn't ask him about it, but maybe if I get a chance to, I will. Robert Plant is connected to Wolverhampton Wolves.
Wow.
The Led Zeppelin legend. And there's a picture of the two of them together in the stands at a game. And I think, well, what do you talk about with Robert Plant right there.
Well, like you said, there's a lot of glory, maybe not a lot of money, but those guys were rock stars as well, right? Because I mean, there's all you can. Not that soccer players today aren't even bigger rock stars, but there's a lot probably more connection back then because they were the entertainers of the time.
And Richard scored a lot of goals for Wolverhampton through the years as well. So great to talk to those guys. Hey, we want to invite you to our watch parties that are coming up. On Saturday, we'll be at both Island Wing locations, Southside and Bartram Market, for a 3 p.m. kickoff for the Champions League, Real Madrid versus Dortmund. Reserve your spot at sportingjacks.com. And then for the Copa America, we'll be at Grace Note Brewing for the first 3 matches with the U.S. men's national team, June 23rd, 27th, and July 1st. If you are a season ticket depositor at those Grace Note Brewing sites for those 3 matches, you will get buy one, get one deals on beer. And they make some great beer there at Grace Note. Big fan. And so if you are not yet a season ticket depositor, let me just say this. Think about how many beers you might have over the course of 3 watch parties potentially. $25 for your season ticket for the men or the women. $40 to reserve spots for both. And you can almost get that value back
in a couple of beers,
with some of the beer. So do that, and we look forward to seeing you at our watch parties. Please go to sportingjacks.com to register. It is free to attend, but we'd love to get you RSVP'd so we know how many people are going to be there for these events. All right, let's get into the U.S. Open Cup.
Final 8.
Final 8, the quarterfinals. The draw is out on July the 9th. We'll have 2 games, one on the 10th, one on the 11th. On July the 9th, Sacramento Republic hosting the Seattle Sounders. What a good one that should be. Then on July, also later that day, July the 9th, actually might be earlier, Atlanta United hosting Indy 11. July the 10th, Sporting KC takes on FC Dallas. And July the 11th, LAFC hosting New Mexico United. So only one home game for the 3 remaining USL Championship teams, but it is a good one.
Well, probably the team out of all the USL Championship teams here that has a recent history in U.S. Open Cup, having made to the finals only 2 years ago, and only to losing to Orlando City in the final, but give a really good shot. And really, New Mexico and Sacramento, I mean, they're both hot right now, right? You know, the really interesting thing, Cole, these dates, when you look at it, July 9th through 11th, these are Copa America dates. So which MLS team will have South American players or South and North American players, Canadians, U.S., Costa Ricans, which we know that the CONCACAF, really a lot of the players play in the MLS, will not have some of their middle to level, top players. Does this give a really good opening for USL teams to come in, home or away, and to even out? We talked about on the report this week on really how equal the level is when you take away some of the DPs and some of the top paid players. Those are the players that are typically representing their national teams, and they'll be potentially absent from these games. And I haven't gone through the roster, but might be an interesting topic for us to talk about next week.
Yeah, as we get closer, for sure, we'll have a better feel for that. Did any of these matchups, the fact that this is how the draw came out, change your expectations? You were saying you thought that New Mexico United would last the longest of the teams. Are you sticking with that?
I am, because I think Seattle Sounders, they just know how to play in U.S. Open Cup. I think they'll set up really, really well, and I think it'll be a great game. It's a great regional game in there. LAFC, New Mexico. I think New Mexico would travel, which I think would be really cool because they have a great fan base and it's not too far. Everything is far from Albuquerque, but I think they can travel, and I think they'll encourage their fans to travel. LAFC doesn't have a history of U.S. Open Cup, right? They're kind of like a new team. So how will they manage that roster? I actually think that Indy 11, they're on the climb. They're doing really well. They've been getting a lot of kind of greedy results, and Atlanta just is not. And Atlanta's been kind of one of those struggling since they really won the MLS Cup several years back when Tata Martino was there as a coach. They just really haven't done that well recently. So that Indy 11 Atlanta game, I think, is a bit of a sleeper. But I think it's going to surprise some people.
I will also point out sometimes surfaces matter.
It does, yeah.
So Indy has played on the artificial surface there at Carroll Stadium in Indianapolis. Atlanta United will have that the hybrid surface.
Well, if they play at Mercedes-Benz, because they've been playing the U.S. Open Cup at Kennesaw State Stadium, which is might be turf as well.
I think
you're
turf,
right. Yeah, it is sport turf. So yeah, it would be interesting to see. Oftentimes, the environment gets set up based on how the MLS teams receive those games, and you can see the draw is interesting because I talked last week. It would be a shame if USL Championship teams are faced against each other, but that would also guarantee someone goes to a semifinal. But very clearly here, they're trying to eliminate USL Championship teams the way that's kind of set up. If we date back to the original conversations, USL versus MLS and US Open Cup and how all that started.
We'll see how it plays out. Again, we have a month plus to prepare for this.
It's a long time.
But we'll see how it all plays out with the quarterfinals. You mentioned the Sporting Jacks Report. That is now on the stations of First Coast News. The show debuts each week at noon on Wednesdays on ABC 25. This week, the encore presentation on ABC 25 Saturday at noon. And this week, Mauricio and I are joined by Becky Burley to discuss some big news in the USL Super League. We have more today to discuss, which we will in just a moment. But we also want to invite you to join us for the debut of the Sporting Jacks Soccer Hour on radio. That debuts Monday, June 3rd at 6 o'clock on 1010XL, 6 p.m. Mauricio, Becky, and I will have 60 minutes of soccer talk. We'll cover the entire globe with a special focus on the USL, U.S. men's and women's national teams, and the Premier League, certainly Champions League and U.S. Open Cup. Other things will come into play. We'll have more from John and Colin on that show as well. All right, here now to the USL Super League news announced just hours before we started taping this podcast, and that is the schedule. Last week we told you about the home openers being announced. Now is the schedule, and there's going to be two halves of the season, but they are going to be broken up. It's not going to be first half champ, second half champ. It'll be a full season with a break in the wintertime, kind of jiving with the international schedule. And each club is going to play a balanced 14-match schedule, 7 home, 7 away, and then the same thing after the break in the spring. The spring schedule will kick off in February. So in total, the inaugural USL Super League season will have 112 regular season matches. The playoffs will take the top 4 teams from the regular season and rank them 1 through 4, seed them, and then you'll have semifinals and the championship. And we'll see how that all plays out. This inaugural season of the USL Super League will be a single elimination tournament for the postseason. Again, with the home games at the higher seeds. And kind of what I was expecting. I don't think there's any huge surprises here from this, but it is interesting. As we said, there's going to be a break from at some point in December through February that will allow some teams to no doubt be very active in terms of bringing new players in.
And I think that's going to be the biggest thing we're going to see in the USL Super League is how are they going to use that break? It does coincide with the international break, so that means there are a lot of transfer window opportunities in writing there, where currently in the Women's Pro League in the U.S., you really can't do that because the transfer windows don't coincide. So which team is struggling or which team is kind of really at the top, and you see additional investors come in, money kind of flooding in. Can we go get a top player? Can we go get a Champions League player? Or even from clubs selling players. Which players are doing well in the Super League? And we see a lot of signings starting to come in. Which players are doing well in teams that now there's a Champions League team that looks at the Super League and say, you know what, that player that wasn't even on the radar before because their opportunities weren't there. Now their opportunities playing. You have 8 more teams, playing at that moment. I think there's going to be some transfers in and out.
I wonder what you think about this, because in this time of the year, after the NWSL season has ended and before the Super League season starts, there are a lot of players that could potentially be signed to the NWSL from the players who had played in the NWSL who could wind up playing in USL Super League. Now we get to a point as the NWSL season is underway that you don't have the same player movement, but at some point you've got the overlap of availability between these two leagues, and it's going to go the other way. I'm going to be very interested to see how, if at all, player movement happens between USL Super League and NWSL during that wintertime break?
Well, I mean, I don't think we need to be. Certainly, I'm not that smart, but common sense would say if you're going to have players that are finishing their NWSL year, and as long as they're not on the contract, right, they want to play. Mm-hmm. And if you have those kind of bubble players that are sitting there and they maybe didn't get an opportunity, by that point, they'll have learned. I think there are a lot of players currently globally, domestically included, that are still kind of waiting to see what the Super League is going to be, right? It's a new product. So maybe they had an opportunity to get signed, or they didn't want to wait, or they stuck to their contract. But if they have a player option, and now after a full semester of watching what the Super League did in its inaugural first semester, I think you see a lot of players that will make that jump because they'll be open, they'll want to play. And as we know, as players, you have a really short window, right? I mean, if you have 10 years at best to really feel like you had a complete career. So if they have an opportunity to play, earn some money, guarantee contracts, have no doubt that Super League teams, while they're playing in the fall semester, they'll be heavily scouting players that become free agents by the end of the fall, whether it's the NWSL or international transfer window opportunities.
Just looking at the NWSL schedule, the last regular season game scheduled for Sunday, November 3rd, then the postseason after that. So again, timing really jives up there where some moves can be made and a player can come in, get a certain sense of how a particular team is playing and the sort of style, the personality, in the dressing room. And
this would only benefit players, Cole, that clubs, because when there's more opportunities, clubs will have to hold on to players. They're going to have to sign players to a longer contract. They're going to have to guarantee them a little bit more. And I guarantee there are a few NWSL teams that are probably looking after their middle of the table players, the middle of the roster players, that maybe will be players that will look to be top of the roster elsewhere. And now they know that there's an opportunity at the end of the season, and they're not going to play that game anymore. Well, let's get to the end of the season to see this. They're probably going to start looking and be like, you know what, we don't want to get to the end of the season to look at this because we know that you can go to a competing league, let's just be honest. And it's good for everybody because more competition just breeds more excellence, and it's fine, and it's player opportunities. But players will start having a little bit more of a say or more control over their contracts because there are opportunities out in the market.
All right, we do want to remind you that you have the opportunity to become a member of Sporting Jacks. It's absolutely free. Just go to sportingjacks.com. You get discounts on club merchandise, invitations to insider events, chances to win prizes and experiences, and you can receive the special monthly email newsletter from Sporting Jacks. While you're there, you can also place a deposit on season tickets. You'll receive first access to seats and special limited edition Sporting Jacks founding member pin. And, maybe buy one, get one on beer.
I'll be there.
When you go to watch party for Copa America at Grace Note Brewing. When you go to watch party for Copa America at Grace Note Brewing. All right, well, you hope to have Tony back in next week. For Mauricio Ruiz, I'm Cole Pepper.
Well, we do have a radio show coming up.
There's so much every week. It seems like there's just more to talk about. We could go on and on and on. We should do a radio show. It will take a little longer, and we'll get it going. So we'll see you on the radio 6 o'clock Monday evening on 1010XL. Back on TV Wednesday at noon on ABC 25. And back here whenever and wherever you are listening to The Sporting Pod. Thanks a lot, everybody.